Hey everyone. Yeah, I'm using my new mic here. It's the one from um, Tackstar. It's supposed to be a very good one. But I thought I'd come here and talk about something that I have not, that I did a reply video to about 4.5 years ago. See, James Wolfe, the Angry Video Game Nerd, he did a video during the Halloween season, I guess you could say, where he talked about some classic Halloween like stuff during his Monster Madness marathon, if you will. Anyway, anyway, he basically talked about a show that I kind of knew of as a kid, but I didn't know too much of because of the fact that it was a show, and you can pretty much see what it is right here. That uh, that I couldn't see because of the tone of it. And like I said, as you could see, it is Inhumanoids. Now, Inhumanoids was one of the Hasbro shows that during the 1986 season, or 85-86 season, actually more along the lines of 85-86 season, that was greenlit to have a full series run. It, along with Jim, were part of a block of cartoons on Sunday morning, along with Bigfoot and Friends, I think, and another show that ran basically 15-minute episodes. I mean, you're basically looking at maybe an hour or two's worth of shows. So basically, Inhumanoids and Gem obviously got enough viewers and ratings to be greenlit for a full series run. Gem, on the other hand, was given more than just one season. Inhumanoids, however, ended up getting one season. Here's why. You see, Inhumanoids was quite a different cartoon for its time. Like I said, Inhumanoids was quite a different cartoon for its time. You see, about this time, um, around this time, basically, you did have some, cartoons that were scary and controversial, but not on the level of not on the level of what Inhumanoids was doing. Inhumanoids was one of those shows that I guess even though it ran for 13 episodes, the 13 episodes was the death nail for the series. See, basically, in television, I can only assume that if you have enough ratings, and this goes back all the way to that time frame, that if you have enough ratings and enough viewership, that even though you could be a show that would be very controversial and maybe not a show that should be seen during daytime, that you're probably just going to get a one season run. And that's basically what it got. And the tone for it definitely didn't help. Now, of course, just like any Hasbro show at the time, it was meant to sell. It was meant to sell basically toys, and their toys were basically some of the biggest they had on the market, and I mean some of the biggest. Um, I mean, according to what Rob said in his review of Inhumanoids, they basically dwarf anything Transformers even has today, and that was back in 1986. Now, there was a lot of things that happened in this series that I'm pretty sure got it only a one season run. I mean, you take a look at some of the monster creatures, the inhumanoid creatures and characters in this show, and you kind of get an idea. Now, true, it was innovative for doing split screen, for using the colorization that it did on the characters, the line art, very innovative. I mean, basically, they took what they took what was basically they took basically what was almost the production value done on the Transformers movie, and they applied it to Inhumanoids. And it was to give it that darker feel. I mean, here was a show that, yes, G.I. Joe had their dark moments. Transformers had their dark moments. But here's a show that basically took a character, even if he was just there for an episode or so, killed him off by having him drown in a lake of acid. And then having the main antagonist, the main human antagonist, bring his remains back up to gather his remains, his skeleton remains, and have him get reformed into a new monster. Now, some of the villains may have been some of the reasons that this show didn't really last as long as it could have. I mean, one of the main villains was Decompose. Now, Decompose, uh, I had to pull a hair out of my microphone's wind wind cover. But Decompose basically was a dinosaur-like undead zombie that would imprison people inside of him. He'd basically open up his rib cage on the right side, put people inside of him right next to his gut. Now, as gross as that is and everything, here's something else that was here was something that I really think kind of caused Inhumanoids not to really last as long as it did. Basically, anybody decomposed touched, they would become an undead skeletoned zombie. Yeah. And who's one of the first people he turns into an undead skeleton zombie? How about the only female protagonist on the Earth Core's team, who just happens to be the sister of the human antagonist of the series? Yeah, Sandra Blackthorne, who is the sister of the main villain, is the first human that we see get turned into a decomposed, undead, skeleton-like zombie. Or some people call it unskeleton-like hag. Even some people were questioning when they would watch a clip or so of an episode when the Earth Core is going to try to when the Earth Core goes to try to rescue her. Some people even see a skeleton head rolling right at the Earth's core, and people are wondering, was that Sandra's head? No, it wasn't. Because I will give the creators one credit. You can't turn one of your main protagonist heroes into something like that and then have them detach their head and roll it down at somebody, because practically you kill them there that way anyway. But, Decompose wasn't the only one. You had Tendrin, you have Maltar, or whatever his name was. Basically just a lot of Inhumanoid characters. And some of these, like I said, basically were some of the reasons the show didn't last but a season. Another reason, I think, like I said, is because of the dark tone. And that dark tone just didn't really help it out. Now, true, one of the positiveness about the show is it did have a continuity. It was a season-long continuity. Even though it seemed like some of the episodes in the show weren't connected, they were. They were indeed connected. Now, with that all said, as we hit into the 9-minute mark here, and I do apologize, that said, with all the reincarnations and reboots and remakes of a lot of the Hasbro properties nowadays, whether it's through comic book form, movie form, or animated series form, the question, I think, arises with My Little Pony doing the success that it's doing, with Gem knocking it out of the park with the comic book by IDW, Transformers always having some kind of moderate success with comics and the toy line and even any kind of animated show they have on, even the movies, whether we like them or not. The question I think a lot of people would have about something like this is, would Inhumanoids and even G.I. Joe having a somewhat of moderate success through comic books and movies and all that and shows. The question I think anybody has is, would something like Inhumanoids do well if it got a reboot? Well, at 10 minutes and 10 seconds, let me explain why I think it could work, but things would have to change. Now, it could work in a sense that you try to stay true to what was the original concept. However, because we're in a society today where some of this stuff may not be acceptable, even if you got it on cable television, like I said, even if you got it on cable television, uh, a lot of things would have to change. Now, one, if you got the villainous characters, you could try to keep them the same, but I think in a sense you would also have to change them up just a bit. Some person at Divan are even modernized, even sculpted or molded some Inhumanoid figures on what they feel like they would look like today. However, this is what I look at. If a show was to be done, the show would have to be really toned down in a sense. Now, I'm not saying it cannot stay true to what the original was, but I think nowadays you see a lot of these shows, Cartoon Network, Discovery Family, uh, what else? Disney XD. You see all these shows that are on there, and yes, they have some legitimately scary moments in there, but they're always toned down. They're always toned down in a sense to where you know it's not that frightening. It won't give kids nightmares, and it won't be that controversial. So to me, I think if something like Inhumanoids was to happen, they would have to really change things up. Like with the villain characters, the villainous Inhumanoids, let's say you take someone like Decompose, you would have to give him armor. I hate to say that. You'd have to take and give him armor. Why? Because basically you'd be covering up the rib cage and everything. And even if you wanted to keep that trait of him capturing somebody, putting them inside his rib cage, you would have to change it now to where that would have to be changed, I should say, to where now he would have to have like an armored plate on, open up that armored plate and place him right next to his rib cage, but not in his rib cage. Kind of catch my drift? It had to be something like that. Now you could still allow him to keep the power where he turns people into undead skeleton-like zombie monsters. And true, you could keep the same weakness or the same antidote, which is expose them to sunlight, and basically they return to normal. But I think, honestly, in my opinion, you'd have to do a lot more than that. You really would. I mean, when I watched Rob the Wonderful's review on it, even he felt it was kind of disappointing that the only weakness that this transformation has is sunlight. Now, this would be another thing as well with a remake, a reboot of Inhumanoids. It's one thing that you could see Hasbro has perfected with My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic, according to its huge fan base. It's one thing that IDW's perfected with the comics based on the Hasbro properties. To me, what needs to be done, and this is the honest truth, is you need to have a straight ongoing continuity. They had a good one, I guess you could say, in the original run, but you need to have one that kind of harkens back to certain situations. Like, for example, like I mentioned earlier, in the original Inhumanoids cartoon, when Sandra, not once, not just in the miniseries movie or the movie, which is The Evil Lies Within, but also in the episode Primal Passion, when you have one of your main protagonists on your monster fighting team, get turned into a skeleton-like monster herself twice, you need to work some kind of continuity situation in there, some kind of story arc in there, even if it's a small one and it's sort of a subplot, if you will. You got to work it in there to where you have someone like, let's say, August. I think that's his name, August, or whatever his name is, because he's like the kind of like in your face kind of guy. You got to have someone like him, maybe even Herc. I think that was his name, Herc. Kind of explain to her, like, let's say they get ready to go on a mission, and Decompose is one of the Inhumanoids are facing. From a story aspect, if they wanted to follow in traits of that and have it happen to her again, just like in the original, from a story perspective, they need to, because I think this really would have worked. This really would have worked. But from a story perspective, they should have worked it to where they'd be like, no, Sandra, you're not coming this time. And as a subplot, you can have a wonder why not. I'm part of the team, ain't I? I made a deal with you guys, right? And they could be like, yes, you did, but look who we're going up against. Look who one of the Inhumanoids that we're facing. You seriously want to get turned into another monster? Work it to where they can work it to where in this subplot, the sub story arc, the sub arc, if you will, that they try to basically explain to her that they don't mind her being on the team because that's part of the deal, but they don't want a chance of being turned into another monster. So I think that would be something that if they wanted to kind of pay homage to the original miniseries, as well as the original series itself, and have her not once but twice get turned into an undead zombified skeleton monster by Decompose, that from a subplot story arc, this could work. It really could. But like I said, you could work that into a subplot, even work into something to where, and again, I think if they would have continued the series on for a few more years, or a few more seasons, excuse me there, it could have worked. You could have worked it to where, they came up, and this could have been in the original series, and if a reboot was to happen, this should happen, that they could work it to where, like, let's say, again, they work in that subplot of not letting Sandra go on any more missions because of the risk, but work it to where, hey, yeah, she, that, well, work it, well, I know it sounds complicated, but work it to where they realize, yeah, look, we did agree, we did make a deal with her, we did agree she can be part of the team, but we can't chance her getting hurt, can't chance her being turned into another undead monster. So to me, if they were to do a remake, a remake series, one of the plot points to me would be, one, make her understand why she can't go on a mission because there's a risk factor involved, but also at the same time have them secretly start to develop some kind of new armor, some new kind of tech that, or some kind of substance that they could coat themselves with, or they could protect themselves with, so that no matter how much Decompose tries to touch them and turn them into undead zombies, it's going to have no effect. I think that would be the best solution. I think that would be the best kind of solution and idea for a subplot to the series from a story perspective and continuity perspective, because at least you're giving reason as to why you don't, if you're them, you don't want to risk somebody for a third time getting turned into an undead skeletized monster again. Now, with that said, speaking of the Inhumanoid characters themselves, you could have the original antagonist Inhumanoids as well as the original Inhumanoid protagonist. But on the antagonist side, I think you need to really have some new ones thrown in there, with newer powers, if not similar powers, to the originals. Like, I think, honestly, you should have a slime/blob-like monster on the antagonist side. And here's what I mean. Have a slime blob-like monster on the antagonist side that has powers similar to Decompose. The only difference is when he touches someone and they get turned into a blob-like monster like himself, instead of being like their own separate entity but mentally connected to the one that did it to them, give this character the power to basically absorb who they turned into a slime monster, if you will, a slime blob creature like themselves, have them gain the ability to absorb that person into them so they can become stronger. Yes, find a way. Yes, you could have an antidote or a weakness to the transformation, maybe similar or different, maybe like it's water or something like that. I don't know, to change them back to normal. But basically, have it to where this new creature not only has mental control over the person they've turned into, a creature like themselves, but also has the power to, also has the power to have them join with him to become one to, make them more powerful. I think that's the kind of creature you would need on the antagonist side, with on the inhumanoid antagonist side, to make things, in my opinion, a little bit uh, more dramatic, I guess you could say, and also put the stakes even higher, because now you don't just have the characters trying to fight to say beat this creature, but now you have to have them figure out a way how can they beat this creature who now has their friend or their ally or whoever inside of them as part of them because they turned them into a creature like themselves. I think that could really work. Another thing I think as well is, um, to me, I think the overall story arc really has to mean more than just, oh, we're protecting the earth and everything. And if you're gonna make it dark, you really gotta make it dark arc to a point that it's not darker than the original, but it's dark enough to where it pays homage to the original, but it grabs everybody's attention. It makes everybody want to watch. I mean, you take a look at MLP in comic book form and in animated form, and they have things so balanced out that where it grabs everybody's attention, that if they could do something similar with Inhumanoids, it could actually work. Where you balance out that darkness and maturity, all the way around. I think it could really, really work. So, to me, though, could Inhumanoids work as as a reboot remake in this new decade, in the 2010s? I think it could, but like I said, it might just get toned down. Like the violence, the gore might get toned down, but the tones, the mature. But I think in exchange, you'll have more mature, dramatic tones thrown in its place. So that's all I'm really going to say on Inhumanoids, and if an Inhumanoids reboot in 2006 in the 2010s could work, animated wise. Let me know what you guys think down below. Comment if you like, and I am out.